Sit back and throw one back with your pinky in the air and a middle finger to the world, and join me, the eclectic gentleman Stephen Watts, as we look back on this day in pro wrestling history. But before we do, put that drink down, like, share, and subscribe, and without further ado, let's get our wrestling history on. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is May 13th, and we're going to start off as we always do on a positive note. That's right, these are your pro wrestling birthdays. 1919, the godfather of the Funk family, Dory Funk Sr. 1932, one of my favorite old school wrestlers, Danny Hodge. 1934, one of my favorite wrestling names to say, Killer Carl Krupp. 1952, Scott Irwin. 1964, WCW and AEW's Mortal Kombat character, Glacier. 1981, I went on his Las Vegas party bus, Jimmy Yang Wang. And last but not least, 1991, the sexy, the vivacious, the smoke show, Scarlett Boudreaux. Of course, on the flip side of that coin, your pro wrestling deaths for May 13th. 2000, Japanese legend, Jumbo Tsuruta. Alright, enough of the sad stuff. It's time to get to the meat and potatoes. That's right, these are your pro wrestling history highlights for May 13th. Getting in the Wayback Machine and going all the way to 1938, Vic Christie defeats Don McIntyre to win the Montreal and Toronto World Heavyweight titles in Buffalo, New York. Moving to 1940, the French Angel defeats Steve Casey for the Boston AWA World Heavyweight title in Boston, Mass., ending Casey's third reign. Making two stops in 1954, Dory Funk defeats Roy Shire for the Southwest Junior Heavyweight title in Amarillo, Texas, ending Shire's second reign and beginning Funk's seventh. Second stop in 1954, we see Ben and Mike Sharp win the San Francisco NWA Pacific Coast Tag Team titles for a third time by defeating Ron Etchison and Enrique Torres. Grooving into the decade of love and making two stops in 1960, first Ricky Dozan defeats Leo Nominelli to win the second annual JWA World League Tournament. Our second stop in 1960 sees George and Sandy Scott defeat Emil and Ernie Dusk to win the Central States NWA World Tag Team titles. Fast forwarding 6 years to 1966, Giant Baba defeats Wilbur Snyder to win the 8th annual JWA World League Tournament. Our last stop in the 60s, 1969, Tony Bourne and Moondog Mayne defeat Carl and Kurt Von Steiger to win the NWA Pacific Northwest Tag Team titles. Grabbing my best polyester suit and disco ducking into the 70s, 1971, Eddie Sullivan defeats Bob Kelly for the NWA Mississippi Heavyweight title in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. 1972, Lars Anderson and Paul DeMarco defeat Pepper Gomez and Rocky Johnson for the San Francisco NWA World Tag Team titles. Moving just 1 year to 1973, Hiro Tojo and Waldo Von Erich defeat Ron Miller and Larry O'Day to win the NWA Austro-Asian Tag Team titles. Two stops in 1975. First, Dominic DeNucci and Victor Riviera defeat the Valiant Brothers, Jimmy and Johnny, for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation Tag Team titles in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Also notable on this day, Jake the Snake Roberts makes his professional wrestling debut. And our last stop in the 70s, 1979, sees Wahoo McDaniel defeat the Spoiler for the NWA American Heavyweight title in Houston, Texas. Making three stops in 1983, Harley Race defeats Jerry Blackwell in St. Louis, Missouri to win his fifth NWA Missouri Heavyweight title. Next, Velvet McIntyre and Penny Mitchell defeat Joyce Gable and Wendy Richter to win the NWA World Women's Tag Team titles in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And our last stop in 83, the Great Tio defeats the Masked Miser, Angelo Poffo, to win the International Championship Wrestling TV title. Moving just 1 year to 1984, Rick Martel defeats Jumbo Tsuruta for the AWA World Heavyweight title in St. Paul, Minnesota. 1985 sees Randy Savage win his second AWA Southern Heavyweight title, defeating Jerry Osk. 1986, WWF taped television in Poughkeepsie, New York. During the taping, Bobby Heenan announced that Andre the Giant had been suspended for missing an appearance several weeks prior. That would lead to the debut of the Masked Machines from Japan to feud with Big John Studd and King Kong Bundy. 1988, the NWA held a 7-man tournament to fill the NWA United States heavyweight title vacancy left by Dusty Rhodes. Rhodes had been stripped of the title 1 month earlier after attacking Jim Crockett. The tournament final, Barry Windham defeated Nikita Koloff to win the vacant NWA United States heavyweight title. Move into the decade of grunge, 1991. Robert Fuller and Jeff Jarrett defeat the Texas Hangmen for the USWA Tag Team titles in Memphis, Tennessee. At the same event, Bill Dundee defeats Eric Embry to win the USWA Southern Heavyweight title, beginning his 4th reign. 1994, ECW ran a TV taping in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at the ECW Arena, highlighted by Mikey Whipwreck, who had yet to hit one offensive maneuver in his career, defeating the Pitbull Gary Wolf to win the ECW television title. And last but not least, 1995, the WWF held the final wrestling show at the Boston Garden in Boston, Massachusetts, with the brand new Fleet Center, now TD Bank North Garden, opening on September 30th of that year, replacing the Garden, which was demolished in November 1997. The Garden had been in operation since 1928. Tony Guerrera, Pete Doherty, George Steele, Angelo Savaldi, Arnold Skaaland, Pat Patterson, Killer Kowalski, Chief Jay Strongbow, Gorilla Monsoon, Nikolai Volkov, and Vince McMahon himself all made appearances on the card to commemorate the closing of the venue. Those were your pro wrestling history highlights for May 13th. I'm the Eclectic Gentleman, Stephen Watts, and I'll see you tomorrow.